everybody. I'm Mo of Many Colors, and welcome to my story time. Today, we're going to be reading some books that were donated to us by the Book Fairy Pantry Project, the founder of which happens to be the Fairy Whisperer, the original Fairy Whisperer, Pamela Leo. Please go find them on Facebook and find out how you can help feed the minds and the bodies of your fellow people by donating books to your local food pantry. All right, tonight we're going to be reading Buttermilk Bear, followed by Crickle. But first, Buttermilk Bear. Buttermilk Bear, written by Stephen Cosgrove, illustrated by Robin James, a serendipity book. Dedicated to Luann and Steve Selsky. May they live forever with their daughter Stesha in a land called Autumn Fall. In the early spring, right after the snow had melted, there were great changes in the land called Autumn Fall. Flowers of every color and description popped their heads into the world, decorating the land left by winter. Green, hardy shoots of grass and clover pushed aside the bits of snow of winter past, eagerly seeking the summer to come. All the animals looked about in awe after a confining winter's sleep. All was as it should be in the land of Autumn Fall. There was at this time, in this land, a bunny family hopping about, searching for a new springtime home. There was a mama bunny, a papa bunny, and a baby bunny named Buttermilk, who looked just like her name. They'd been searching for days and were about to give up when they found a perfect den to make their home. Together the bunnies scooted down the twisted tunnel, avoiding a clump of dirt here and an old cobweb there as they explored their new home. Finally, Buttermilk's mom announced that the exploring was over and that it was time to get on to the task at hand. "Come, come, family," she squeaked, as mothers do. "We need sweet grass for the mattresses and pollen for the pillows. Work, work, work." Buttermilk looked at her papa, and her papa looked at her. Then, laughing and chanting, "Work, work, work," they marched off together to gather what was needed. They worked and labored far into the night, and when all was neat as a pin, fell fast asleep. The next morning, as Buttermilk ate her breakfast of clover buds covered in sweet currant cream, she listened to her parents talk about all the new and exciting things to be found in Autumn Fall. Everything was perfect in Autumn Fall, except for the bears. "Bears?" said Mama Bunny. "There are smelly old bears here in Autumn Fall?" Yep," said Papa Bunny. "Big, wattle-tailed bears are right here." Yeah, bears are the one thing that can ruin a neighborhood. Buttermilk listened carefully, for she had never seen a wattle-tailed bear before. She decided her first order of business would be to search out some of these smelly old bears and see for herself how they could ruin a neighborhood. As soon as breakfast was done, Buttermilk hippity-hoppitied up the tunnel to the meadow above. She sat at the entrance to her home and looked this way and scrunched her nose that way, trying to decide the best place to search for wattle-tailed bears. She finally chose that way and hopped on. Buttermilk hurried along until she found a furry creature with a big flat tail. "Are you an old smelly bear?" she asked curiously. "And if you are, why are you ruining the neighborhood?" "No, I'm not a bear. I'm a beaver. I chew up trees and make sticks out of them." With that, the beaver waddled on his way, and Buttermilk hopped on hers. She hadn't gone far when her nose began to twitch in great irritation. Wafting on the air was a terrible smell. "That must be the bears," she said gleefully. She hopped quickly along the path until she came face to face with a strange creature. The creature had slick black fur and a long white stripe from the tip of his nose to his tail. If there ever was a smelly creature, that was it. Are you an old smelly bear? And if you are, why are you ruining the neighborhood? No, I'm not a bear, said the creature indignantly. I'm a skunk. I spend all day smelling the flowers and eating the pink persimmon blossoms and never ruin neighborhoods. Then, with his tail held high, the skunk marched into the woods. So it went for the rest of the morning, with Buttermilk asking each and every creature she met if it was a bear. And there's the skunk. As the day wore on, Buttermilk hopped faster and faster. She scurried here, there, and everywhere, but she couldn't find a bear. She thought as she raced down the path. Maybe there isn't any such thing as a wattle-tailed bear. It was at this precise moment that she ran, pell-mell, into another creature running in the opposite direction. They flipped and flopped, colliding in a puff of dust and tangled legs in the middle of the path. What do you think she found? The two of them politely helped each other up and sat at the edge of the primrose path. I am so sorry, said Buttermilk, as she examined her newfound friend. I was hopping so fast I didn't look where I was going. My name is Buttermilk. What's your name? The other creature smiled a gentle smile and said, My name is Jingle, and I wasn't looking either, so please accept my apologies. For you see, my parents were saying just this morning that some waggle-eared bunnies had moved into the area. Papa said, There goes the neighborhood. I have never seen a bunny before, and I wanted to find out what kind of an animal could carry off an entire neighborhood. Buttermilk giggled. It couldn't be the bunnies because I'm a bunny. My papa said it was the wattle-tailed bears who were ruining the neighborhood. The little bear laughed and couldn't be the bears because I'm a bear, and I have never ruined a neighborhood. Buttermilk Bunny looked carefully at Jingle Bear and sniffed twice. You don't smell. You aren't very old. Maybe my papa was wrong. Yeah, says Jingle, after sizing up Buttermilk. You don't look nearly big enough to carry off a neighborhood. Maybe my papa was wrong, too. Satisfied that their parents were mistaken, the bear and the bunny spent the rest of the day meandering about the meadows of autumn fall and quickly became fast friends. Later, as the sun was setting, they hugged each other that special way friends do and promised to meet tomorrow at the very same spot on the primrose path. Then they hopped and waddled in opposite directions to tell their parents the good news. No, they're hugging. It's so cute. I love these books. Buttermilk skittered and scampered through the woods to the burrow that the bunnies called home. She zipped down the tunnel and ran right into her mother, who happened to be carrying the supper of firm-leaf lettuce to the table. Buttermilk went flying. Mama went flying, and the lettuce landed on Papa's head. Oh, Mama, I'm so sorry, but I was so excited, Buttermilk said as she cleaned up the mess. You were so wrong about the bears. I met the most wonderful little bear named Jingle, and he's my most favorite friend in the whole wide world. She bubbled on and on about the fun they had, when suddenly she realized that her parents weren't laughing. In fact, they appeared to be very upset indeed. Papa Bunny slowly stood and brushed the lettuce from his fur. With one large, furry foot tapping on the floor, he sternly said, Baby bears grow up and become mean and vicious bears who eat little bunnies. That is the way it is, and that is the way it will always be. You will never, never see this Jingle Bear again. The mad bunny. He's got lettuce on his head. But Papa, Buttermilk cried, maybe, just maybe, if Jingle and I became friends, bunnies and bears could live together in the forest and help one another. No, said Papa with a thump of his foot. That is the way it has been, and that is the way it will be. With tears pouring down her furry face, Buttermilk talked and talked. She talked about cooperation and understanding. She told her parents that the bears probably felt the same way about them, and if bunnies and bears could only try, they might just become friends. Come with me tomorrow and see what good friends Jingle and I have become. The two older bunnies listened reluctantly, but refused to change their minds. "We will come with you, but only to make sure that you say goodbye to this bear forever," said Papa firmly. Then, because it was late, the three of them curled up beneath quilts of eider down and fell fast asleep. Bright and early the very next morning, Mama, Papa, and Buttermilk Bunny hopped off to the primrose path. There, at the edge of the forest, hidden beneath clumps of clover, drenched in morning dew, the older bunnies nervously watched as Buttermilk hopped to the middle of the meadow to meet her best friend, Jingle Bear. Buttermilk sat with a thump on an old wooden stump and waited. It wasn't long before the little bear cub came waddling along and sat beside her. "You wouldn't believe," said Jingle, "what my parents said when I told them I had met a real live bunny. They ranted and raved and at first refused to let me see you ever again, but finally decided they would watch and make sure I said goodbye to you forever." Sure enough, at the other side of the meadow, Buttermilk could see two big bears peering anxiously over a patch of honeysuckle vine. Buttermilk and Jingle sat and talked about the problem at hand, with all the bunnies on one side of the meadow and all the bears on the other. Finally, Buttermilk and Jingle realized that the way the bears felt about the bunnies was the same way the bunnies felt about the bears, and there was nothing the two of them could do to change their minds. Nothing would change. But maybe, just maybe, by staying the best of friends, Buttermilk and Jingle could teach the other bears and bunnies that prejudice was just plain wrong. After giving each other a special hug, they hopped and waddled back to their families, resolved to the fact that barriers can be broken, but only in a matter of time. As you walk through forests or the meadows of your mind, stop and talk to those you fear. Good friendships you may find. The end. I really hope you liked this story. This is one of my favorites. It's a very important lesson that we know that everybody in this world was born to be exactly who they are, and that we need to accept and love all of the people around us because we know that. This next book is a little bit different, and it talks about temptation, doing things we probably shouldn't do. I haven't read it since I was a kid, so we're going to experience it again for the first time together. This is Crickle Crack. Crickle Crack, written by Stephen Cosgrove, illustrated by Robin James, a serendipity book. Dedicated to all our weaknesses, by acknowledging them, may we make them our strengths. Sometimes my hair gets stuck, so if you see me doing this a lot, that's what it is. Here we go. In a green grove of trees grew the strangest tree, the Crickle Crack tree. The Crickle Crack tree grew in twisted profusion and was hidden from casual passerbys by a thicket of thorny branches and vines. On this, the Crickle Crack tree grew mutated little flowers that only budded and never blossomed. You are never to touch, let alone eat, the blossoms of the Crickle Crack tree. For if you eat the blossoms, you will grow weak, and the tree will grow strong. But then, this is only a story. The Crickle Crack tree. I need some water. Hold on a sec. All right. Now in this wood also lived a lot of creatures, partridges and possums, bears and bunnies, and a squirrel named Squeakers. Squeakers was everyone's delight. He would scamper about the branches of the green trees with his long silver tail bobbing behind him. Looking hither and thither for a little bit of this and a little bit of that, he chattered to the other creatures as they walked by, telling them all of the wonderful things that he had seen that day throughout his travels. Like all the creatures of the wood, Squeakers had been told stories of the Crickle Crack tree. But like a lot of stories he was told, he didn't quite believe them. One bright sunny morning, as Squeakers was skittering along on his way to school, he came to an odd place in the woods. A place in the woods where it was dark, cool, and mysterious. This is a bit strange, he thought, as he scampered between the trees, nervously peeking here and there. I thought I had seen all that there was to be seen in the forest, yet this seems different and oddly strange. He carefully slipped through the thicket of thorn and vine, and there before him found the oddest tree he had ever seen. Twisted branches wrapped themselves around the gnarled trunk. Here and there, growing amidst the twisted branches, were tiny, tight, white buds. He thought as he walked around and around the tree. This must be the Crickle tree that Mother and Father always warned me about. I don't know about you guys, but the pictures are my favorite part. The old, gnarled tree seemed to sing as the wind whispered through its tattered leaves. Take a bud from me, take a bud from me. Squeakers remembered that he had been taught about what he had been taught about the Crickle tree. Don't go near and never, never taste the buds, for the buds are too sweet and you can't eat just one. I wonder, thought Squeakers, how a bud from an innocent singing tree can be too sweet. Maybe I'll try just one. With that, he quickly picked a bud and popped it into his mouth. The bud slowly dissolved, and Squeakers was disappointed to find that it didn't taste sweet at all. If anything, the bud tasted a little bit bitter. As he stood there, savoring the flavor, the Crickle tree seemed to sigh and creak in glee. Just when Squeakers was sure that all the warnings had been wrong, things around him began to change. The grass seemed to grow a little greener right before his eyes. The songs of the singing birds seemed a little louder. Squeakers began to think that he saw more than he saw and heard more than he heard. Wow, he shouted in exultation. Everyone was wrong. The buds of the Crickle tree are great. In fact, I think I'll have another. Squeakers ate another bud, and then another, and then another. Soon he was dancing to songs that had never been sung, and the Crickle tree groaned in evil satisfaction. Little dancing squirrel right there. As the forest spun and whirled around him, the day disappeared. Soon Squeakers found himself in fading darkness as the effects of the buds began to wear off. Oh no, I was supposed to be in school today, he said, and now it's nearly dark. Boy, I'm going to be in trouble when I get home. He started to leave, and then, as an afterthought, he grabbed a couple Crickle buds and scampered home. He zipped up the tree and into the bowl where he lived with his mom and dad. As he slipped up the stairs and went into his room, his mother asked him how his day was at school, and the Crickle bud lied for him as he said, "Just fine, Mom." "Aren't you going to have supper? We're having your favorite, beanberry stew." "Oh, Mom, I'm just not hungry. Besides, I ate some hickory nuts with the guys after school," he lied, and with that he sneaked into his room, delighted with his deception. He lay on his bed and tried to read, but he kept falling asleep. This is no good. I have to read this story, or I'll really be in trouble in school tomorrow. Maybe I should eat another bud. He popped a bud into his mouth and swallowed it quickly. Just like that, he felt wide awake and read, or at least he thought he read. "Squeakers," his mother shouted through the door. "It's time for bed. Better put out your candle." As he was told, Squeakers put out the candle and tried to fall asleep. But no matter how he tried, he couldn't sleep, and he lay down on his bed and he tossed and he turned in the shadowed moonlight. Finally, at nearly the crack of dawn, he fell into a fitful sleep with the nightmares of an evil tree knocking and scraping at his windowsill. Squeakers woke from his sleep, but he felt like he had never slept at all. He looked terrible. He had big black circles under his eyes, and his tail kind of drooped. He was pooped. Oh, he looks very tired. Poor little guy. Squeakers grabbed his books and dashed out of the tree, heading for school. He ran down the path, right past the thorny-vined entrance to the secret place of the Crickle Crack tree. He hadn't planned on going back. If anything, he had resolved never, ever to touch a Crickle Crack blossom again. But the tree sang its song, and Squeakers stopped to listen. He crawled through the vines that tore at his fur and looked at the ugly tree. "I can't miss school again," he cried. Then he grabbed a handful of buds, slipped through the hedge, and scurried to school. As he ran, one of the buds fell from his furry paw to the side of the path. He got to school in the nick of time and hurriedly took his place on the log as the teacher began the lesson. Squeakers tried to pay attention, but his mind kept falling asleep. Then he remembered the Crickle Crack buds in his hand and popped one in his mouth. Just like that, he was wide awake and bushy-tailed again. His mind wandered as he thought of silly things, and he began to giggle out loud. All the other creatures in class looked at Squeakers oddly, then tried to ignore him, but his laughter became louder still. Finally, the teacher ordered him to stand in the corner of the old oak tree until he could stop his giggling. Squeakers thought this was even funnier yet, and he laughed with his nose pushed into the bark of the wise old tree. Every time he would stop laughing, he would pop another bud in his mouth, and the whole process would start all over again. Recess came, then lunch, and still Squeakers stood at the tree, giggling crazily. The other kids in school didn't know what to think. Squeakers had always been such a good student. Finally, one of the bunnies hopped to where he was standing and said, "Why are you laughing? What could be so funny that you would want to be punished all day long?" "Oh, no," laughed Squeakers. "It's not what, it's an it." "What's an it?" asked the bunny, totally confused. "These are it." And with that, Squeakers held out his paw and showed the bunny his stash of Crickle Crack buds. "You can have one too." He tried to give a bud to the bunny, but the bunny wisely refused, so Squeakers shoved the rest of the buds in his mouth. The little bunny knew there was something wrong and told the teacher, who told Squeakers' parents, who came rushing to school. Squeakers' head began to reel, and the world began to spin around and around and around. This poor little squirrel was very sick indeed. "I'm so sorry, Mother. I never meant any harm," Squeakers cried as his mother held him very close, rocking back and forth as he told the truth about the tree. His father angrily said, "That Crickle Crack tree should have been cut down years ago. Come, we must all destroy the evil tree and all the buds that grow on it." And with that, all the older creatures of the wood marched from the clearing with their axes, their sputtering torches held high. No, sometimes you just need your mommy or your daddy. They marched to the thorny thicket and forced their way inside. There they chopped and hacked at the tree until it was nothing more than a pile of rotten wood. "Gather all the buds and throw them on the pile," shouted Squeaker's father. "Everything must be burned so that all the temptation of the Crickle Crack tree is gone forever." When all was piled high, the animals set the chopped tree on fire and stood back safely, watching the oily smoke rise into the darkening skies. They watched and watched until all was burned to fine gray ash. Then, to make absolutely sure that every bit of the tree was destroyed, they even buried the ash. Satisfied that the tree was destroyed, all went back to normal in the wood. Squeakers slowly recovered from the effects of the buds and understood that it had been wrong to take them. The love and understanding of his parents and neighbors had helped him to see how bad the tree was and how the buds had hurt him. All went back to normal. But near the path, beneath a bit of thorn thicket, a tiny white bud that would never blossom thrust its shoots into the ground, and a new Crickle Crack tree began to grow. As you grow, and as you see, don't be tempted by the Crickle Crack tree. So there are many lessons that can be learned at the end of this story. And that is that nothing is good to excess. Everything in moderation. And if your parents tell you something is dangerous, they're probably right. I hope you have enjoyed story time here with me tonight. If you didn't get an opportunity to watch this live, you can see it on my YouTube channel, Mo of Many Colors, or you can watch it right here, and I may also repost it on my very good friend Sage Griffin's page. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and I hope you learned some valuable lessons here with me tonight. Have a great day. Sleep tight.